Good afternoon, everybody. Is it good afternoon or still morning? I think it's morning. Hi, everybody. So I'm Lule Demmissie. I'm the US CEO of eToro, which is a social trading app. And we started in the US about 2+ years ago, but we are a huge global social trading app. I often refer to us as sort of like the Robin Hood of the world, and not necessarily in the US yet, but we're coming, and we're coming fierce. We're really proud to be sponsors of this conference. I'm excited to be with my illustrious panel. I've also been asked to do a second job today. In addition to contributing to the panel, I will proxy as a moderator as well. So bear with us. But let me pass it on to my colleague right here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shroder. I'm CEO of Binance US. We are an exchange in the United States focused just on serving US retail users. And we have licensed kind of the technology and obviously the naming rights from the global Binance brand.
Great. I'm Tony Gallippi. I'm the co-founder of BitPay. As the name implies, we handle Bitcoin payments. We're actually the longest tenured Bitcoin company, I believe, at this conference. We were started in 2011 when Bitcoin itself was only about 2 years old. And we enable merchants all over the world to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment.
Thanks. My name's Jason. I'm COO of OKCoin. We were founded in 2013, not as long tenured as Tony here. But we're a cryptocurrency platform. We allow retail and individual users to come and access crypto from their local currency globally. We also service institutions. We provide API support and allow them also to tap into Bitcoin payments and Bitcoin trading.
Great. So we've got a variety of ways that sort of the crypto space is being played on this panel, right? Which is fantastic about this coin, which is essentially that ultimately it plays so many different use cases, right? So why don't we start with Tony in the middle to tell us a little bit about how in this current environment you are handling scale in your business.
Sure, great question. So we started natively as a Bitcoin company, and we came up with an idea that we wanted to actually focus on some utility that Bitcoin could do instead of just being a trading or speculative instrument, because there were some exchanges at the time, and we could have built an exchange, but we felt, well, let's try to do something different. In hindsight, I think we picked something that maybe was a little bit too hard or maybe a little bit ahead of its time. But it's been interesting. Bitcoin itself has gone through different cycles where you have just rapid growth in terms of media attention, user growth, transaction volume, network congestion. Then it goes through periods where it declines. And I think we've all been through at least maybe one of those cycles. We've been through, I think, 3 of them. And they're all a little bit unique, but in all of them, right, you find out that things are moving a lot faster than you anticipate. You can't hire people fast enough when you need to, especially in the areas of like customer support, for example. And then when things slow down, you maybe realize it a little bit too late, and you're forced to make some hard decisions about how to right-size the company. So this environment right now, Bitcoin has been up and down. It's been in a range, but a lot of Bitcoin services have seen kind of good, steady growth. It has been a little bit muted. It hasn't been as crazy as it was in, say, 2013 or 2017. And so we've actually been able to manage it, right, with a good head count and being able to support our customers.
Jason, how have you interpreted this environment from a scale perspective for your business?
Yeah, I think like Tony said, our industry goes through cycles. We've seen some pretty frenzied activity back in 2017 and 18, and we saw a little bit earlier a year ago. But for us, I think we try to smooth that out, right? For us, we need to invest and build and hire people. Here in the US, we're a bit new. We opened up in 2018, and so we've been growing. I mean, over the past year, we've hired a little over 100 people here in the US already, and we're continuing to invest in that space, right? We need people, we need engineers, we need talent to be able to deliver that product. And for Bitcoin in particular, a lot of that work has been gone into making sure we support the latest Bitcoin upgrades. Lightning Network was a big one last year for us, where we launched support both first for individual users and then later for institutions via our API. And then earlier this year, we made sure that we were ready for the Taproot upgrade. And so that all requires engineering know-how and testing and everything. And so that I think is the trickiest part. It's just we can't hire fast enough, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Brian, how about you?
Like my fellow colleagues, I think that the challenging part for us is building for the cycles, right? And especially in the bull market runs, it's hard to build capacity ahead of time. And so last year, Binance US had this really beautiful / terrible problem where we had more users trying to give us money, and we made it very difficult for them to do so, which is precisely not what you want to do in a business.
Yeah.
And so, looking back historically at some of the, the wait times for onboarding onto our platform, some institutions who are literally doing, hundreds of millions of dollars of trading a month would require like a 3-month wait time, which is absolutely unacceptable. And so, what we're doing now is we're trying to build capacity to be able to be responsive for onboarding users, to trying to be responsive to retail users at kind of a steady state, and then trying to automate it as much as possible. So bring in the right tools and processes so that humans are not the bottleneck. And then to the extent needed, if there is a bull run, then we can supplement through third-party contractors or things like that to handle the boom times.
Yeah. It's not that dissimilar for eToro as well. So eToro globally has about 29 million users. So just from a context perspective, eToro is actually a social platform. So ultimately, you come to invest in a variety of investment instruments, including tons of coins that we have on our platform globally, as well as stocks and any other kind of commodities and other things that individual investors might want to trade. When you come to our website, you actually get a social handle, because it is a social platform in the authentic sense of the word. You can engage in that platform in a way that doesn't actually require you to have an account yet. So feeding through the social feed and understanding from other people. So for us, scale is a few things. One is, I think, it is the fool player that gets scared in bad times. So we're actually making sure that even in times where there are lulls, we take the opportunity to do a few things. One is to continue to improve the endurance of the platform. As you said, when it comes to, for instance, last year our e-verify rates were really tight, right? Because of the level of volume we had. And we recognized we need to grease the skids as much as possible. So e-verification is very high at eToro, much higher than most online brokerage houses. We're leaning into some of our brand activities to make sure that people know us when the cycle comes back, right? Nobody wants to date the person that they don't know. So part of it has been the endurance of our platform and our system, and then part of it is a redoubling down of our brand and not shying away from that in this environment. I think that scale cannot be won by those who shy away from hardship. And so I think that this is an exciting place for us right now in this time, in this moment, to lean in and make sure that our brand is known and our platform endures. So we're really excited about, frankly, what the next turn shows. And we all know, we've been around to know, there's another turn. Yeah. It's coming, right? So it's just about who endures to get it.
I'm wondering if you've ever, when you look at kind of the boom and the bear market cycles, have you ever turned off the marketing machine during these periods? Because what we did is, we decided to actually eliminate all marketing during these periods of times, because I didn't want to pay to acquire a new user that would have a bad experience.
Yeah.
That I think is not good to the long-term
It is
brand.
a conundrum galore, right? Because ultimately, during less volume, your experience is actually really smooth because nobody's crowding the pipes, right? So for us, yes, we definitely spigot the marketing up and down. As a social trading platform, being in the news cycle is part of our brand presence. And so when market cycles are peaked, what we actually also make sure we are rising, in my experience as well, not just at eToro but elsewhere, is when you actually lean into the earned media sort of part of your strategy, thought leadership, et cetera, so you can actually slow down the marketing dollars. But because we were so early in the US, we didn't slow down because we wanted to get more than our fair share when the peak of the market was happening. But I think as a steady business, I agree with you. When the volatility hits, you slow it down a little because, not just because you're scared of having bad experience for customers, but you don't need it actually. Like the flow is coming already. So that's been the experience. Tell me a little bit about, and I'll start with Jason this time. What concerns you most about the future of Bitcoin and crypto at large, whether it's in the macro environment or your own micro environment right now, from a being able to continuously scale perspective?
I'll answer that real quick. But Brian, I just want to ask you a quick question on that note. Do you also scale marketing when network, like I'm talking like crypto network experiences are also poor? I'm just curious.
We're probably a really, really bad example of marketing because when I joined last fall, we had 1 FTE in our marketing department.
Oh, I see.
So we have relied, in the last 2 years since we've been on more organic, which is a nice thing to do. But I think coming into this year, we're scaling up our marketing department, so that choice will be something that we have to make this season. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, and sorry, Lule, to your question about sort of Bitcoin challenges and what I'm worried about?
Yes.
Was that the question? Yeah, so I think Bitcoin right now is in putting price aside, I think there's more around the network itself. I think we're in a good spot, right? We've recently had some upgrades. I think the community has there's a path forward where there's not really contentious network and upgrade decisions to be had. I was just at the open source stage downstairs, and people were talking through how the Bitcoin core developers are operating, and it seems like there's good momentum. The stage downstairs is full, by the way, and everyone's there listening to them talk, and so there's a lot of good momentum on the development side. And so for us, I think that's really important, actually. So not a concern, but it's important to continue to see that and foster that. For us, OKCoin, we have a program called the Developer Grant Initiative, where we've given over $1 million already to Bitcoin core developers. These are just independent open source developers. They don't have a job per se. They don't have an employer. Hey, welcome.
What's up?
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I was outside running the doors and realized I messed up the time on my calendar. I thought I was supposed to be here at 1:30. I apologize.
No worries. Welcome our moderator.
But my distinguished panel obviously can handle themselves extremely well without me.
Let me just finish my thought. And I was just saying that we really need to support the developers, right? And make sure that our businesses are built on top of open source protocols that we need to support and contribute to. And so for us, we've contributed $1 million. We just yesterday announced we've given an additional $150,000 to Brink and to support the work of Gloria Zhao. And so, I think that to me, the network is in a good place, the development's in a good place, but we need to continue to support that.
Yeah.
So
I've been shadowing for you, by the way. So here's the mic
great
back.
job.
Thank you so much. So I mean, we were talking about supporting open source developers.
Well, no, sorry. The question is more like, and I was the first one to tackle this. How do we feel about the challenges of Bitcoin going forward, and if we're worried about anything in particular for our businesses?
All right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I guess I'll
Brian or Lule, you want to have a stab at it?
So we're focused on making I think that the nice part about having a quiet period is that you can invest in the actual infrastructure itself, and so being able to invest in tools and processes like customer service, where we can actually scale not only now but then during peak periods, is what we're taking this time to do. And so what would normally be a chaotic time, we can actually rip out some processes or tools that have been slow or create customer complaints or tickets. And so we're using this time effectively so that we can provide a better long-term experience, not only at baseline, but also at kind of peak and scale times. And then the other thing that we've done now is we were not right-sized as a company in terms of hiring and talent. And I think that is probably something that is universally across the stage. And so what we've kind of done is we've focused on hiring kind of at the executive level, and then encouraging them to kind of propagate down. So when I joined in October, we had about 150 people, and now we are closer to 400. So in a 5-month period of time, more than doubled the organization, and I still feel we're not kind of right-sized to kind of serve the customer base that we want.
Yeah, we also grew tremendously in the U.S. alone. So as I said, the U.S. entry point was about 2+ years ago, and we grew 3x last year. And so we are sort of readying ourselves to make sure, and we also have investments in stocks and other instruments coming forward, and so we need to make sure we're ready for a multitude of regulatory environments, and that also requires that scale of humanity expertise. For me, actually, I've been in the retail investing business for many years. I have seen downs and I have seen ups. And as I said, it is the fool that steps away when it's down. So it is actually an opportunistic time to lean in. The thing that's really like interesting and it's not so much concerning, but it's a question mark for me, is really actually the macro environment of the regulatory space. Meaning like, what's fascinating about Bitcoin and crypto at large is that I dare you to find any asset class in history of ownership that has had the diversity of ownership it has had. Not a single asset class. If asset ownership is a form of capital ownership and power, as we all know, and so my worry would be this amazing technology that has such a wide variety of use cases that it solves for, including bringing in more people that look different and have different experiences. If the regulatory environment has a chilling effect on it, I don't think it will endure in the long run, meaning like I think in the long run the technology always wins, as you all know, as illustrious technology people. But in the short run, I would worry that it has a chilling effect. I think good regulation has the power of flattening the playing field, teasing out the things we know are problematical in this space. But if you over-vector the other way, it can also have a chilling effect. So I was just looking at the other day, like when you saw some new investment instruments arise in our space, right? Whether it was options, commodities, during the time that they became the it thing. What's so different about this it thing is the multitude of use cases it powers versus the other ones were really speculative instruments, right? And so I'm hopeful that as an industry, if we lean in and we influence the good side of what this technology can do for us, that we abate that chilling effect of the challenge that could come.
I would love to actually hear from Tony about maybe the challenges of regulation while scaling a Bitcoin business, just because BitPay has been doing that in the US probably longer than almost anyone else. So I'd be curious to hear your reflection over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we obviously were started in the US and this is our home base. You guys are trying to enter the market. And it's different because in the US, depending on the type of financial service that you're offering, you may either have one regulator or you could have 50 regulators. And the rules are not very clear. Even in the United States, all 50 states, every one of them has a different definition of what is money. And so if they can't all agree on what is money, how can they all agree on what is a money transmitter and what qualifies for that? And for the things that we're doing, we're not actually transmitting money. We're doing something else, but this is the only thing that they can possibly fit us into in some regards. And so you have to almost anticipate how a regulator is going to interpret the law, because if you read the law, it could be black and white that this activity is regulated and we don't do that activity, but yet they're coming to us and say that they think that we do. And so you have a dilemma. You certainly don't want to argue and make an enemy out of a regulator, but you need to engage them and work towards a compromise and a solution where they feel like they've accomplished something and you feel like you've accomplished something. So it's been an interesting effort to watch some industry groups try to harmonize and normalize some of the regulation across the states. Try to go through some national licensing regimes where a company like us could be regulated by one national regulator. It's been an interesting journey for the last number of years, and I don't think it'll be solved anytime soon. I think these guys like to take their time. They like to think things carefully. Some of them will dive in and get more educated than others. It's something that I think is going to be with us for a while, the uncertainty.
Makes sense. I see, Brian, you're nodding. Do you want to add to that?
I mean, I would love a national regulator that has clear and consistent rules and regulations. As a money service business in the United States, we're getting our money transmitting licenses on a state-by-state level, right? And so when you add in the U.S. territories and districts and provinces, it's actually more like 60 different regulatory bodies. So there's this, perception in the public that, crypto is in this gray, unregulated space. Like, it's total bullshit because I have, 60 people who are interested in understanding kind of everything. And so from day one, we just need to ensure that we have kind of the best compliance and KYC and AML and BSA screening. The regulators come in whenever they want to do examinations. We're doing quarterly reports, and then with MTLs, we have to do certification every single year. And so, we are built and designed to be a regulated and licensed entity. I think that hopefully what you were saying is that, as time goes on, I think that the regulators are just realizing that this is an inevitable force. And to the extent actually that the broader public supports it, then regulators, congressmen, legislators are supposed to reflect the will of the people. And so I think that what you're seeing is more of a grassroots efforts. And now, for the upcoming political cycle, you have both Republicans and Democrats that are actually supporting Bitcoin and the efforts of the community. And so I think that things are only getting better.
Just to add on that note, I think that's a great point. There are actually candidates that are running with a Bitcoin-based platform, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. Yeah, it's fantastic. And so if you guys are interested, you guys should vote and call and make your voices heard to your representatives too. It will shape some of these regulatory uncertainties that our industry currently faces. But just to echo everyone's point, yeah, we deal with like the same regulators you guys deal with, 40 plus, 50 plus. It could be improved for sure.
I do find it interesting that we're talking about scaling businesses, and that turns into a conversation about regulation. But I think it does make to the point, Lule, that you're making that this can stifle innovation if not done thoughtfully and in a well-researched way. Brian, you brought up the point of scaling Binance US from 100 some to 400 plus in a matter of months. Knowing what it takes to scale a team of Bitcoiners, that's not an easy feat at all. I would love to kind of hear about that journey a little bit, and then maybe we can hear from the other panelists about that as well, just because all of these companies have been growing enormously fast.
So I've had the great fortune of being a part of really amazing companies during their hyper growth phase. So I was a part of Uber as Uber was starting to scale internationally. I was a part of Ant Financial as Ant was expanding their operations. And so the lesson that I learned was that in terms of how you spend your time, interviewing and hiring is the only thing really that gives you leverage. Because to the extent that you find really talented, hardworking, senior leadership, like that's the only thing that allows me to take things off my plate and put on theirs. And so once I kind of have the executive team, then what I tell them is basically the same thing. Like, yes, you are supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, but I want up to 60 or 70% of your initial time at Binance US actually recruiting your team. Because again, that's the only thing that provides you leverage and you scale. And so we've done a really great job of propagating that and obviously growing the business quite tremendously in the last few months.
Let's go to Lule.
Yeah, so we haven't gone to 400, but we went from like 20 to 100. The scale is humongous. We're about 120 now. So I think I too have gone through cycles of scaling, and as Tony said, figuring out when the balance happens once you've scaled, and then you have to sort of slow down because the cycle went through. And for me, with the experience that I've had both at eToro as well as elsewhere, is people are not machines. And so you have to pause and make sure that you're caring for the sentient beings that we all are. What does that mean? You have to create a culture that allows it to sort of stabilize. And in a virtual company like ours, we are hybrid/virtual. That means you have to create infrastructure that creates those sentient beings connecting, right? Whether it's at this conference that we have a few people, some of my people are right there, say woohoo, people, or whether it's virtual sort of town halls and other things we do to create a sense of culture, right? So that's one thing, is like respecting that people are sentient, feeling people, and you have to make sure that you cement a sense of like having a stake in the game, right? So there's a few ways we do it. One obviously is empowering leaders to make sure that they're able to have the latitude and the support that they need. But the other way obviously is to ensure that you have ebbs and flows. So for instance, we had a really peak hiring structure and then we slowed down. We need to consume these people that we've just hired to make sure that they norm and storm and become. So I think that if you just keep going, you run the risk of never having invested in that sort of cultural norm that I just talked about. So I know that sounds a little squishy, but frankly, I think a lot of companies fail at that, and therefore any other fancy strategy that's on a deck fails.
Well, I would say you sound real. Let's go to Tony.
Yeah. So I would say that a lot of us over the last 2 years, we've tried to grow and scale our business in a mostly remote work and virtual environment, which is difficult when you talk about connecting your employees and really building a culture. It's much more challenging.
Yeah.
And so our people ops person, we actually promoted her, and she's been doing a fantastic job of building all types of interactive trivia contests for our employees and games and stuff. Because we don't have that lunchtime and water cooler conversation or coffee machine conversation. But there's another challenge I wanted to bring up. We started giving our employees the option to be paid in Bitcoin, a part of their salary, and we've been doing this for a long time, since 2013 or 2014. And we have some of our employees that just got bold and says, I will take 100% of my salary in Bitcoin, and they've been doing that for a long time. And now the challenge is they don't need to work anymore. So at the same time that we're trying to scale, we have some employees that are retiring early, and makes it a bit challenging.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, cheers to them. That's not an easy decision to make, but it's definitely hard to have the cream of the crop kind of pricing you out with the corn. Let's go to you, Jason.
Just want to add one point. I think we're all kind of hybrid now, and the challenges of that is more so about the a lot of people are joining the crypto and Bitcoin industry and trying to absorb. There's a lot to absorb, right? I think the biggest challenge for us is how do we make sure that people that have been in the company longer or been in the industry longer or know different facets about Bitcoin and a bit more, how are we able to share all that information and share that ethos and mentality across the firm? I think that, to me, it's a bit of a culture question, but also a knowledge and sort of understanding of the community question. That's a challenge, and I don't know if we figured it out yet, but something we're actively working on.
Do you all find that bringing on people with like Bitcoin subject matter or crypto subject matter expertise alongside their like role, like a marketing role or an operations role, is that something that's critical for your hiring process, or like how does like the knowledge of the subject matter in terms of hiring? Let's just go in a row. Let's go with you, Louis.
So what's interesting is, so we have several challenges, right? As I said, we're regulated by the SEC, FINRA, all of the state regulators. They do, because we have all of these instruments, right? So pick a topic, and you're not going to get a hybrid individual that knows all of those things, right? So then it comes down to what I've experienced, at least in the context of digital assets. And we are essentially, identity-wise, a digital asset shop, even though we have all these other instruments that we invest in, is that it's actually cultural more than it is subject matter expertise, at least the seat we sit in. And what I mean by that is, as long as you are hiring somebody who has that sort of like the resilience to lean in, the lack of fear, then as long as they have their expertise, whether it's in their marketing role, if it's a marketing person, a PR person, or they come in with context of the broader industry, you have to make sure that there is enough in your base that has broader industry experience. But ultimately, I think that more than anything else, it's a mental framework that we hire for, because I feel like this space cannot handle closed mental frameworks. It just can't. You can go to an insurance company and you'll be perfectly okay being a closed mental framework person, right? So it's not that I'm being flippant about not having that experience, but just that mental framework test is also really important to us. I think a lot of my folks here will testify. Some of them are they're new to Bitcoin, but they're leaning into it. They're new to crypto, and they're leaning into it in a way that, as I said, this space is a cultural experience. Like, one of the things that I think is so exciting about it is I actually feel like most people, regular people, are curious about this space, right? Tell me anybody who would know about futures if you walk down the street, right?
No, I think that's a good
or
point.
options, for that matter. Maybe some, right? Bitcoin, crypto, has just infused the culture in a way that no other instrument has, really. So I think that gives us the luxury of making sure we get the right persona in hiring as well.
Awesome. So I want to hit on everyone with that same question. Let's keep it super brief because I want to give you each all a chance to do a last word.
Should I keep going?
No, but that was a fantastic answer, and I agree.
To you. Yeah. So for us, I think it really depends on the role, right? So it would be probably quite difficult to find a government public policy expert who's connected to both sides of government that has 10 plus years of experience in the crypto business. So we can flex on that. What we, I think, have had really good success with, actually, is hiring people in our customer support function who are passionate about the industry, because then they are coming from kind of their own passion, and I think that makes them serve the customers better.
Yeah, I mean, customer support is absolutely huge, so that
Critical.
makes sense. Yeah.
No, I would agree. You got to have people who are experts in their role. You got to have people that are just, again, mentally, looking at creative problem-solving solutions and willing to work as a team and all that. But yeah, instead of, I would say, Bitcoin expertise, I would say Bitcoin enthusiasm is more important, right? I mean, that's what gives them the extra, the incentive to do the extra work to support the customer, to care, right? To care about their fellow employees, their fellow teammates, and the customers.
I mean, they've covered it all. Just one thing to add is, I think one extra edge is the enthusiasm is super important, the inquisitiveness, the willingness to be open-minded. Also, I think it's sometimes helpful for people to, obviously they need to be good at what they're being brought on to do, but there is a bit of, we're not here to build legacy finance all over again, right? So you need kind of have someone with that slight shift in mindset and able to sort of absorb at least what the ethos of what we're trying to do here is. I think that's also important.
So my last question, and again, we're running short on time, so maybe we'll try to keep answers around a minute, but my last question has to do with what is the most critical thing for your organization to do in order to take scaling to the next level, to go from where you are today to that next level of new customer inflows that we typically kind of see with this market? Let's go with Jason and then finish off with Lule.
Yeah, I think my personal focus is on scaling and building out our teams. We have some exciting stuff that we're not quite ready to share yet, but we need that team and personnel to be able to do that. For me, I do think that we are building businesses on the back of something bigger. And so it's important to sort of balance the two. And that's important for us. We do spend a lot of time making sure that the community and the ecosystem is healthy. We're building things, I mentioned earlier, Lightning API to support other companies to build and accept Lightning payments and do all the cool stuff that Bitcoin allows individuals and institutions to do. So, yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah, same thing, right? We just announced yesterday that we turned on support for Lightning payments for all of our merchants, and we actually connected to your API.
Oh, thank you.
And we're doing it great. And
Huge,
both of us are using software, from Lightning Labs, right? So everybody is kind of contributing to the ecosystem and being able to work together and innovate and just improve the overall experience for everyone.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Brian.
so I think that there's the traditional tech answer, which is we're doubling our tech team in order to get out more products and services. But I think that probably more important than that is actually instilling in our culture a value of customer first. And I think that is something that we want to spend a disproportionate time on, is basically every single level, thinking about how can we serve the customer better, what can we do. And I think that when you have that culture, then it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy and allows you to scale better.
I mean, I think I would double down on everything everybody said. The only thing I would add is probably when the downturns come, not to bat an eye, to keep investing in product, to invest in your systems and smoothing, because I feel like these are the moments where you perfect the machine for the next massive wave. And so I think it's the importance of not batting an eye.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice. And with that, you all, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much to the panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.
Great. Thanks.